Well, good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. I'm actually very happy to be a crowd member this evening, and we won't be asking for comments from this part of the public. But thank you for coming out. This is a very important meeting. As we all know, the airport has the ability to but it has a tremendous effect on the residents of Rye Brook. And any potential changes to the airport have the potential to be either very good or very bad, or neutral, I guess, for the village residents. And so we're very lucky that we have a dedicated group of people that are our master plan, or the action committee. So it's the master plan task force members. And so we recently formed this committee to look over the master plan and really take action on it. And it's the immediate liaison to the task force is Trustee Stephanie Fisher, and then we have the chair of the Airport Advisory Committee? Advisory Committee,
Council.
Peter Schlachtis.
Advisory Council, yep.
Advisory Council, sorry, Peter Schlachtis. So people who know a lot about the airport, and we're very lucky to have a dedicated group of volunteers that are willing to put in the time and effort to really look at this plan, dissect it, and figure out how it affects us, and then also speak on behalf of Rye Brook's residents in order to try and enact change that would be beneficial to Rye Brook. So without further ado, I'm going to let you take it over, and thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Do we need to say the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Mayor Jason Klein. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I am on the Board of Trustees, and I am the chair of this Rye Brook Airport Master Plan Task Force. And I was very lucky to get a great committee. And I'll start off by introducing everybody. First, we have Village Trustee David Heiser over there. Then we have Airport Advisory Chair Peter Schlachtis, and another Airport Advisory member, Paul Noto. And then we also, Stephen Malkinson, he's another Airport Advisory Council member who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. And then, of course, Village Administrator Chris Bradbury and Administrative Aide Greg Rivera. We're very lucky to have everybody here. And there's also some members of the Airport Advisory Council who will be able to answer some questions at the very end of the presentation for us. So let me get started by saying that Westchester County is about to begin an extensive outreach program to receive public input as it works to update the airport's master plan. When this master plan is completed, this will guide airport land use and operations for the next decade or longer. That's why it's so important that everybody participate and as much as possible. We were tasked by the village board to inform the community about the airport's master plan process and to encourage the public to participate in this process and provide consolidated comments from the village officials and the residents to give to the county. In order to protect our interests, we need to hear your ideas, your thoughts, concerns, and general visualization for the future of Westchester County Airport. And I hope you all signed in. Unfortunately, we were hoping to have this as a live meeting, but that didn't work out. So this is being recorded, and you will be able to download it and watch it after, because we are recording it. So just to say, the goals of this meeting are to become more aware of the airport. We will provide an overview of the airport master plan process, of the actual airport, and the recommendations that we have come up with, and then we will answer any questions you may have. We will start with Paul Noto. He will first give a brief overview of the airport. Then Peter Schlachtis will give us an overview of the master plan process. Then I will come back and talk about more of our objectives, and then we'll have some question and answer. So please hold your questions till the end. and then we'll get on with our presentation. Thank you.
Do you want me up there?
Yeah, come up here,
Okay,
Paul.
sure.
Thank you.
Are you going to be turning the pages?
Yes. You can, or you can, it's just the right arrow if you want to do it. It's up to you.
It's up to
You want Greg to do it?
I can do it.
Good evening, and thank you, Trustee Fisher. I appreciate that introduction. My name is Paul Noto. I am a member of the Rye Brook Airport Advisory Council, and I serve with Steve, Peter Schlachtis, and some other fine people who are either not here tonight or watching on TV. And I wanted to give you a little bit of history of the airport because I think it's an important perspective to have as we go through this master plan process. And for some of you who may be new to the community, you may not know all the history, and it is somewhat interesting to know that in 1945, two big things happened in 1945, the end of World War II, and the actual opening of Westchester County Airport as a public facility. And at the time, it was, for many years, there was what we now know as the terminal. There was actually a Quonset hut that functioned as an actual terminal at the county airport. And in the, late 70s, early 80s, there was a bond, and they built a new terminal, which is the one that we now use today. So some things you might not know about our airport is that it's actually the third busiest airport in New York State. It is larger than LaGuardia Airport. It has 702 acres. It has a longer runway than Chicago Midway Airport. It's located next to the Kensico Reservoir, the source of our drinking water, as well as the drinking water for most of Westchester and New York City. 85% of the flights in and out of the airport are what we call general aviation, meaning private, not commercial. Most of us think of the airport, and those of us who use the airport to fly commercially, we go and we fly to places like Florida or Chicago and whatnot, and we see the planes and we think those are the ones that are using the airport the most. In fact, they're not. They're only 15% of the usage is with what we call commercial aircraft and commercial use. The main terminal, the one that we use mostly, is the one that is used for the commercial aviation. The other private hangars are there, and you see some of the smaller jets flying around. Those are for private use, and those are for what we call general aviation. There is a restriction at the airport based upon a terminal use agreement, and that agreement is between the County of Westchester and the FAA and the airlines, and it limits our terminal space. This is, again, on the commercial use to 240 passengers per half hour, except on certain holidays, around the holidays. We have what's called a voluntary flight restriction, a voluntary curfew that is in effect from midnight to 6:30 a.m. And that is something that, of course, affects all of us because I'm sure we've all heard planes, landing or taking off between midnight and 6:30 a.m. in the morning. That is a topic for conversation later on. It's a topic for conversation with the county as part of the master plan process, and I think it's something that obviously we think a lot about. For the most part, we've had about 13 airlines that work out of the airport. We have, as you can see on the board here, we have corporate aviation, we have light general, we have some government, the fixed base operators, and these are the ones that use, with the exception of the commercial airlines, they use those private hangars. So, as part of the process of being in this with the FAA, we have to have the county has to have a master plan. You need to go back or go forward. That's okay. Thank you. So we've had over the years a number of different master plans starting in 1980. As government being government, we always like to update the master plan periodically. And there was a 2017 master plan that was submitted to the FAA, but the county advised them that it wasn't final. And the new administration, the latter administration, had undertaken a master plan that got delayed because of COVID. So right now we are in the middle of, we are beginning the supplemental master plan process, which is why we're here tonight, to get you energized about that process and to help you participate in that process. So this plan will provide guidance for all future decisions regarding the airport and the airport property. And there are, as you know, other issues other than just noise relating to airport use. I mean, there are significant environmental issues relating to any time this level of machinery and aircraft are being operated in a close proximity to a fairly sensitive environmental area like the Kensico Reservoir. So we need to be focused on both the noise issue, of course, and of course the broader environmental issues. So the master plan supplement will focus on the analysis of all of the airport issues as it relates to all of the areas around the airport, obviously not just Rye Brook, but all of the areas that are impacted throughout the county. Next. So there are going to be a series of public meetings. First one is tomorrow night. Obviously, the public is invited. We urge people to participate. And I think once you attend those meetings, there will be ways in which you can also supplement what you have to say if you can't speak at those meetings to contact county officials and write in and participate with your thoughts and concerns. As far as some of the other issues surrounding the airport, I think it would be helpful if you focus on the things that are most important to you and the things that you think most impact your quality of life and your property values. There is as Peter will explain, there is a broader interest here with the airport. It does serve, a significant economic purpose in our county. And I think, when you go to these meetings, you'll get both the pros and the cons of airport use. So with that, I'll turn it over to our chair, Peter, to go through the master plan process. Thank you.
Greg, you can go back one slide, Greg, leave those up if you like.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for coming out. My name is Peter Schlachtis. I live in the Belfair community near the airport, and I chair the Village Airport Advisory Council. I'm honored to do so, along with folks like Stephanie and John and Paul and Steve Malkinson, who's not here, and others. And I'm also very appreciative that we have a village government who has been consistently responsive to airport-related issues, including our recommendation to flag this one for the community. And our village has, over the years, consistently taken positions reflecting the interests of our community, whether that was in the past when there were plans put forth to privatize the airport, where it wouldn't be so directly controlled and supervised by our elected county government, which the village took a position against, or whether it was the prior master plan process, which the village pointed out was flawed in a number of ways, both in terms of content, that master plan, which was developed and ultimately finalized, I believe it was in 2017, replacing one all the way back from 1987. But it included projections of substantial growth at the same time as aviation interests were arguing that that there was something wrong with the number of noise complaints because the airport wasn't growing. But the projects that were therefore included in the old master plan based on those growth projections have already served as the basis for the planning of additional parking facilities, additional fuel depots, and such, which shows you that the master plan, while it's not binding, it's not law, like the village, like our village's own vision plan, is nonetheless meaningful. It sets boundaries and guardrails that make certain plans and projects more likely because they come within what was envisioned, those types of projects are facilitated by the master plan, and things that are outside those boundaries, while not prohibited, face additional hurdles in order to get approved and implemented. So the process that we're undertaking now, which is technically a revision to the existing master plan that was developed by a prior county administration and submitted at the end of 2017. The reason we're so quickly going into this process is that around that time there was a campaign. The candidate who became county executive, George Latimer, campaigned in part on the fact that that master plan was flawed and should be revisited. And I should note that both he and the village pointed out at the time that the other way it was flawed was not only in its content, but in the process used to create it. It was developed over years, and I can attest to that by witnessing discussions of it at county airport advisory board meetings, with no public transparency or engagement or involvement whatsoever. And then once it was all done, there was essentially one public meeting at the county center, and as far as I can tell, no changes made as the result of hours of testimony, much of it quite concerned at that meeting. So now we're about to enter a very different process where, according to the county executive, any and all aspects of the master plan are up for review and revision. And so this is stage one of that process. It will consist of, as Paul noted, 3 public forums, the details of which are displayed and available on the village website, the first one being tomorrow evening at the Pace University Law School in White Plains, the closest one to us being the following Thursday, June 2nd, at Manhattanville College at 6 p.m. And those meetings are not designed to be technical, technical examinations of a lot of fine print, but rather a 30,000-foot, if you'll forgive the analogy, view of what residents in this county want and fear, and basically how they use the airport and how they would like to see the airport develop or not develop over time. So there is no prerequisite for participating in terms of expertise or knowledge. Your own experiences, your own perspective is all that the county is looking for at this time. There will be other stages to this process. Over the summer, the county will take into account the input that they hear at this first set of meetings. The county will then work with their consultants to develop draft proposals and elements that could figure into a new master plan and incorporate some of the more recent research that's been done on aviation trends, et cetera. And they will then share that with the public at the end, late summer, early fall, in probably a very different format, more of a show and tell type gathering, where you'll be able to see some of these things and comment on them supportively or critically. And then that will probably lead to a stage 3, where the county goes back, refines and revises the drafts that have been done, and then shares again the results with the public. So this is a very welcome new approach, but only if we take advantage of it. So, the last question I want to address is, well, what can we do? We're just a small village. First of all, you may say, I don't know anything really about the airport. So first of all, again, I assure you, you don't need to have pre-existing knowledge. Your vision for what you want and what you don't want, what you've experienced, versus what you would like to experience over the next decade or two is all you need to share. But there is plenty of information available, starting with the village website, where if you search under the word airport, you'll come to the advisory council's page, and you can take it from there with links and documents and issue summaries, et cetera. The second question is, again, even if I come and share my story, what does it matter? And to that I would say that it's amazing how it doesn't take so much to exert influence at the county level. We've done it before. And if Rye Brook comes out hitting above its weight, punching above its weight, if we get higher turnout than surrounding communities, it will be quite remarkable how the county pivots to listen to what we have to say. So what's most important, by the way, is not what we say or whether we all agree. Everybody's entitled to their own perspective on this. Really what matters most is how many people and what percentage of our residents come out, turn out, and share something. It's kind of like voting. Whatever party you vote for, the politicians pay attention to where the voting rates are high. And those are communities that get their attention. And the same goes here. So, what I would say to you is please come out and participate, but understand that everybody viewing this and everybody here, even if we do that, that's not going to lead to success even alone. What is necessary is for everybody viewing this and everybody here to reach out to your friends and neighbors and create a multiplier effect by getting them to realize that this is important and this is easy enough to do and it's worthwhile. And we'll be happy to take questions and delve into any areas that you're particularly interested a little later in the meeting.
Peter, if you don't mind, I'm just going to add one other comment to the conversation. So we want to make sure everyone got the handout that was outside the door on the table. And please put your name and email address so we can keep you up to date on upcoming meetings or progress that's being made by the county or within the village or through our task force. But one thing in particular I just want to mention that was very important is the county's policy. People talk about there's a policy of no expansion of the airport. That dates back to 2003, October 2003 to be exact. And in that policy, it's important to know what that resolution said, because people have referred to it for many years, and it's good to remind people of what that policy was. So I'm going to read the resolution. It's also available again in the handout, but for those that aren't here tonight, I just want to read a couple of paragraphs, which is, it's a Westchester County Board of Legislators resolution reaffirming the Westchester County Board of Legislators' commitment to the community to preserve current limitations on county airport facilities. And I'm just going to read the resolved clauses, because those are the action items. Be it further resolved that the County Board of Legislators reaffirms its commitment to the community to preserve current limitations at the airport facilities, and be it further resolved that the policy of the County Board of Legislators is to limit development of the county airport to its current physical capacity, including the weight-bearing capacities of airport pavements and the site footprint. Be it further resolved that the policy of the Westchester County Board of Legislators is and continues to be one of supporting no increase in the total capacity of the airport's runways, taxiways, ramps, gates, hangars, terminal, motor vehicle parking areas, or access roads in order that we may protect our fragile environment, including the drinking water for almost 9 million people, from the noise, air, and water pollution that any such expansion would generate. And be it further resolved that the county staff is directed to ensure that the Federal Aviation Administration, the county's federal and state delegations, stakeholders, and all other pertinent parties are aware of this county policy so that the intent of this honorable board may be widely known. So I know people talk about there was a resolution. Some people may say, oh, in the early 2000s. It's pretty specific, and that's been the policy on the facility and potential expansion since 2003. So that's an important thing to really bring to light and make sure the details of the resolution are widely known.
Great, thank Thank you, Chris.
Excuse me, Stephanie, just
Yes.
if I could just riff off of what you just said for 1 minute. First of all, if anyone watching or anyone here would like to submit questions that don't have a chance to be addressed today, there's an email address, airportmasterplan@ryebrook.org. So Airport Master Plan, one word, lowercase, @ryebrook.org, and we will get back, and you will get a response. Number one. Number two is that with respect to the airport policy, I think one of the most common things people get nervous about or hear about is that they'll come up to speak and share concerns and experiences, negative experiences perhaps that they've had about the airport. And then they're going to hear something along the lines of, well, why did you move next to an airport? Well, there's actually a quite easy answer to that. Yes, I moved next to an airport. Okay, I was aware the airport was there. And I'm not looking for the airport to go away. I accepted that the airport was there. However, when I moved close by the airport, there was a long-standing, pre-existing county policy against expansion at the airport. And that's what we want to see the county write in and protect in the airport master plan. It's perfectly reasonable, okay? It's not radical, and it's justifiable. So, Chris, thank you for sharing that, and I will turn it over now. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. And thank you for giving that information. So some things that we came up with as a task force that are in the presentation, and I'll read them to you. These are our recommendations that we felt were important to us and important to the village to pass on to the county. The first one, going off of what Peter said, using clear language to preserve the county's long-standing policy against airport expansion. We want it to be loud and clear so there's no misconceptions and everybody understands. The second is to strengthen the voluntary overnight curfew that is too often not followed. We've all heard the planes at all hours, I'm sure. Number three, very important, strengthen environmental strategies to address noise, air emissions, and discharges of de-icing fluids, pollutants into the Blind Brook and Kensigo Reservoir from which Rye Brook and other counties and New York City residents obtain their drinking water. And number four, we all want to update the main passenger terminals, technology, conveniences, security, but only in conjunction with the long-term extensions of airlines' terminal use agreements, which were also listed before in the presentation. Those are our four main concerns that we want to pass on to the county. There's other issues of concerns that we had. We just felt that we really had to narrow it down to four. Some of the other ones are safeguards against modifying airport facilities in a way that could enable more private and corporate non-commercial flights. Adoption of sustainable unleaded fuels, solar installations on buildings, open land, safe electric aviation. And lastly, prioritizing Westchester-based businesses and pilots for the airport's limited hangar facilities. These are all very important to us, and we really welcome your feedback. And again, the email address will be up there after if anyone wants to submit something after. And that concludes our presentation, and now we will get to questions. And to answer your questions, we will refer to the Rye Brook Advisory Council, which we have Paul Noto up here, Peter Shalakis, and then we have John Mungo, who's here as well. and he will be happy to answer any questions. So what we just ask is that you come up to the mic if you have a question, and then somebody can take the question and answer it. So does anyone have any questions? Oh, wow, no questions. Nobody has. Okay,
Come on
please
up.
come up. And then please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Anthony Artebane. I live at 4 Little Kings Lane, which, is in the path of the airport, but it quite honestly, we moved in about 27 years ago. It's gotten way better, my recollection, than when we moved in, particularly noise issues. The noisier planes don't seem to be the commercial airlines. They seem to be the private airlines. So, one of the things would be, and I don't know, is there some way to get a better agreement with the private planes that use the airport to maybe, over time, improve the noise control? Because that would be, I think, one of the key things from a quality of life standpoint. I think people on the other side of the airport, it's way more important to, from what I'm told. North Castle, taking off is a lot less quiet than landing. So is there anything in the recommendations that deal with that, or is that a sub item?
Go ahead, Peter.
Okay. Anthony, is it?
Yes, about Tony.
Okay. Tony, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your question. So let's begin with the fact that your question highlights a couple of important things to know about the airport and how, airports run in general. The county has little or no authority to affect where planes fly, what planes come in and out of the airport, other than, number one, as Paul noted before, with respect to commercial airlines, we have special grandfathered rules that we can enforce that have been tested with the FAA and in the courts. But with respect to the other planes, we're pretty much at the mercy of what the airport can physically and safely handle. Now,
And who makes that decision, the FAA or?
well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's the FAA, and essentially the FAA are overseeing the management of the airport. If anyone at the airport feels like the management is overstepping its bounds, they can bring in the FAA, more or less, okay, to referee the situation. So the answer is, it really behooves the county to adhere to the policy that it adopted back in 2003, which is, well, what we can control are the facilities at the airport. And that's what a master plan focuses on. So if the facilities at the airport are designed and maintained and updated in ways that, number one, prevent expanded operations or discourage expanded operations, and in ways that encourage, right, and support new quieter technologies, that's probably the best strategy, or at least one strategy that we could propose the county take. The thing to be careful of is that we don't get only half a pie. So what half a pie looks like is, great, let's build all kinds of stuff for quieter, more modern aircraft, but without, doing anything that reduces usage or facilities available to old aircraft. Because the one thing you can say about even the best technology is it's not silent. There's still an impact, right? And so, we see that happening a little bit with fuel. There's a push now to bring on more green, sustainable jet fuel, and some coming onto the market appears to be non-leaded fuel for smaller planes, okay? And, all of that is great from an environmental perspective, et cetera, but do you repurpose tanks or do you add new ones, which creates, in the end, even more fuel available for more planes? So I'm sorry that it's not a quick and easy answer to your question, but I do think that it's a valid concern, and the county master plan is the place to lay out a strategy for trying to accomplish what you're talking about.
Right, well, that's it's a big quality of life issue, notwithstanding the very important issues on environment, which we get, being that it's next to a reservoir. I think the noise footprint is an issue, and quite honestly, if the noise goes down on a per plane basis, if there's a few more planes, that's not troubling. Maybe it is, depending on where you are in the flight path, but if the noise goes down, it really, as it has gone down over the years, at least in my anecdotal understanding, it's been very helpful. But I did notice it's more the private planes, and they're the ones that generally fly the odd out after 12 and before 6. The flip side is, and this is a question, is has anybody, or has it been included in the plan, what the economic impact is? We are home to a lot of corporate headquarters, and a lot of executives live around in the county. And I am told that the fact that there's an airport that's convenient is a very positive issue for, citing a corporate headquarters. Notwithstanding taxes and economics and everything else, all things being equal, and even if they're a little unequal, that's a big draw. So has any, input or, quantification of economic costs or benefits been taken into account in the plan of what that would look like in terms of, attractiveness? Because, being a, resident of Rye Brook, taxes are pretty high. I think we all understand that. We have a great school system. There's a bunch of reasons for it. Westchester taxes are high too. The more we can get to reduce the tax base in terms of revenue, or increase the tax base and reduce the per capita, would be helpful. So I think there's a very viable economic benefit, which kind of has tension with the quality of life benefit.
Let me address the taxes before you can maybe get to the other.
Sure.
So let me just what taxes we get there, or what payment in lieu of taxes. So the Village of Rye Brook currently gets a small payment. It's like $45,000 for the a year for the parking garage, but that's only for the term of a bond, and that's going to end in the next year or two. Outside of that, the only other taxes we get from the airport is from the fixed-based operators. They pay a payment in lieu of taxes under their agreement. So wherever there's a private hangar that's operated by a fixed-based operator that stays on site and the private planes come into, they pay us a payment in lieu of taxes, as well as all the other taxing agency. And then the last big tax that's paid by the airport goes to the sewer district. So that goes to the county sewer district, of which we're a part of. So that does offset the cost for the school, for the sewers in the area.
Right. So I remember when they went to plan to privatize, there were some meetings, again, as you put it, Peter, kind of at the end, it was here it is. And I did go and did understand that there's not a lot of tax benefit directly from the airport, but indirectly is what I'm talking about. If you can attract more executives and, have more corporate headquarters around, corporations get taxed, that lowers the base. So I'm just wondering if somebody has thought about that as part of, the plan.
So what I can say to that is this. First of all, there absolutely will be an economic analysis of the airport's direct and indirect benefits, costs and benefits, okay? And, I would say that it's a good thing that we are assured that there will also be, for the first time, an analysis of the environmental impacts as well, because those have tangible costs that need to be thought of in conjunction with the economic benefits. both of those, as far as I know, are supposed to be part of, and the economic analysis has been part of it in the past. So you're going to see that. Okay.
All right, I just wanted to raise the question.
And
because I am told that's a big-
in terms of the offset between those indirect economic benefits and the impacts that you're describing, first of all, it's common to refer to them as quality of life benefits, and they are, in part. There's also a burgeoning amount of science making clear that there are public health impacts, whether it's from emissions, whether it's from noise. And not all noise, just like not all emissions are created equal. Some are more toxic than others. There's plenty of science behind what kind of noise is more harmful. And loud bursts of noise, especially overnight, that disturb sleep, have been associated with significantly more serious health issues. So you're absolutely on target with that as well. But I would encourage people that another thing you tend to hear when around these issues is that this is an annoyance where people in nice communities get irritated, and as a result we should choke off our economic growth. And number one, nobody's talking about choking off any economic growth. Number two is that this is not a matter of simple irritation. It goes well beyond that for many people, and I think for those for whom it does, you shouldn't hesitate because the science backs you up. And the last thing that I will just say to that is that the rule with the airport is if you build it, you must let them come. So it's great to imagine designing projects at the airport that will only result in the kind of operations that you might ideally like to see. But just understand that if that turns out not to be the case, you can't take it back. And that's a principle to note.
But we would add, too, though, that there's a very good understanding here that the airport is good for Westchester businesses, and we want that to continue. We want this to, and that's why this task force has made the recommendation to the extent that businesses are using the airport. We'd like to see the priority to Westchester businesses that offsets Westchester taxes and businesses to encourage to come here. So while we're certainly concerned about expansion of anything in the footprint, we realize this is a very big asset for the business community that we want to see continue. We just want it to be in a thoughtful and managed way.
Right. Okay, well, this has been very responsive, and I really get a good sense of how much work has gone into this. And I want to thank you for, giving a very, thorough response. The one thing I would say is if numbers are important, you might want to mobilize some kind of contact. I know when there's elections, I get 50 calls and 20 emails. That might help get some more people out.
Right.
Because, again, I just came because I'm interested,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions? No? Oh, you do. Okay, please come up.
Hello, good evening. My name's Les Tolchin. I live at 18 Parkwood Place since about either 1985 or 86. I've been having such a good time that I can't remember which of the years it was. I could go through the pros and the cons as well as you can, and you live a little bit closer. I'm at 1,800 feet when I clock them coming over my house. I have that particular program that tells me whose plane it is and everything else. Okay, and the smell of Jet A fuel in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning is not that appealing. And you can come to my house on a Sunday afternoon between 2 and 6, and it's It's more like being on the aircraft carrier Midway in the middle of the Coral Sea during World War II, with planes every 1 minute. And they're mostly corporate planes, okay? And that gentleman was correct. The corporate planes have engines that are probably worse than the commercial jets. Unfortunately, it's gotten to the point that I can identify, sitting in my office facing the airport in a distance, I can tell you just by the sound of the engine whose plane it is and what time they're coming in and so on and so forth. But that being said, I've flown the airport since, I don't even know, 1976 or whatever. I've flown in different parts. You can't get to the other part of the country. Maybe now you can with Breeze, but I've flown to Boston, Washington, Chicago, a whole host of different places. I used to fly, I don't know, 150,000 miles a year, all domestically, so there were benefits to it. Here's a question, and years ago I brought this up with someone who was close to the county administration, relative to, I would fly sometimes into John Wayne Orange County Airport, which used to be a puddle jumper airport. It has one runway, and a few years passed and I came back and there were nothing but U.S. Air, large U.S. airplanes, the tails, one after another. And I remember twice on American Airlines, you had to fly New York, Dallas to John Wayne. And I remember they scooted me through the airport, closed the door behind me, and we're taking the plane off, and there's a purpose to this. And I said, I don't understand, what's the rush? Am I delaying it? They said, no. They turn out the runway lights at John Wayne Orange County Airport at, I believe it was 11 o'clock at night. Nobody can land after that, okay? Why, that's question number one. Why, if the county controls, I heard you say, the facilities, I would imagine that the runway lights belong to the facilities. Now, I'm not encouraging anything bad to happen, but if corporate planes know that you can't land after 11 o'clock at night, and I get them over my house at 2:30 in the morning, my wife may be sleeping, but, a lot of them are making a complete racket, and I certainly wake up. That's one question. The other one would be, just so I throw it out so I don't forget, is obviously it looks like Breeze is a fait accompli, and I would imagine that there's no problem with Breeze because it's taking up the, for lack of a better word, the slack of destinations that Delta either dropped or maybe JetBlue. I didn't keep up with it, but obviously that's an enticement for people within a larger area, and they're not going to run to Stewart Airport to be able to go to Las Vegas, to go to, I forget, San Francisco and a host of other places. But I throw those two questions out to you.
Go ahead. It's
Okay.
Hampton all over again. Right?
I know, right? Yeah, so, all right, first of all, quickly with respect to Breeze, we have a local county law called the Terminal Use Procedure Law. And as we mentioned before, that is allowed to exist because of special grandfathering. These rules were in effect before the federal legislation was passed that pretty much now prohibits local restrictions on use of an airport. Okay? So I don't know John Wayne's, situation.
I don't even know if that's the case still.
Right.
This was years ago.
So I don't know John Wayne's situation specifically, but to me the most likely explanation is that they also had certain laws that they were able to grandfather in. With respect to Breeze, that terminal use procedures law, as was mentioned, limits the number of planes that can be on the ramp, airline planes that can be on the main passenger terminal ramp per half hour, and the number of passengers. It basically works out to 2 slots per half hour of planes either coming or going. So if, during the pandemic, obviously there was a big drop-off in airline traffic, and to the extent that there are still open slots now, and those are allocated on a quarterly basis through a process that the airline runs, a lottery process. Breeze was certainly welcome to come and use the empty slots. But you can, that's not considered expansion because it's working within the pre-existing limitations of what's allowable at the airport, for airlines.
We should add, that limitation is 240 passengers per half hour, which is a really important thing to have retained. Not only does it limit the number of passengers, but also the planes that are coming in and the size of those planes, because nobody wants to have it. The airlines don't want to have an empty plane, so they're going to limit the size as well.
But there have been changes. There are, as both speakers have pointed out, there have been changes over time. There are fewer airline planes now, but they're bigger, but they're more modern. So that changes the noise profile in various ways. But the end result is when a bigger plane comes in late after midnight, you're going to feel it, no matter what
I can't tell
technology.
you that, I won't say that I haven't been one of those people who wound up landing at 1 o'clock in the morning coming from someplace on a larger plane because we were delayed due to weather and everything else. And I'm not against commercialization and further development for the county and all. I'm just, I'm torn both ways because I sit there and I listen to them, and there are times I have friends over. They really cannot believe the traffic, and they're from little up the road in Connecticut, and they basically say, we don't have things like that here. And I said, but in the bulk of so many of your friends are crossing the border from Westport and Stamford and Greenwich. You go into that parking lot, and it's the same way it used to be at the train station in Portchester. Every third car was a Connecticut car. I couldn't get a space, having had one many years ago and let it go, and I would sit and sort of chuckle about it as I parked over at Costco and walked further over. But, hopefully more people will take an interest. I mean, I see when I used to fly in, and you would fly in over, I don't think it was Greenwich, I think it was Portchester, in that direct line, and I could see the airport out in the distance, especially if it was a night flight. You would think it's flying over a lot of homes. Well, those planes, commercial and non-commercial, wouldn't people take a little greater interest, since this is getting a decent amount of publicity, and I've seen it on News 12 and everything else advertised and whatnot. So, let's hope the three other county programs will get a few more people from Rye Brook.
For sure.
At any rate, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
No, thank you. And I want to point out, by the way, that I also serve on the County Airport Advisory Board, and we get monthly reports on operations at the airport. And I think it's worth pointing out that the companies who lease hangars who are Westchester-based companies that lease hangars and base their aircraft at Westchester are exemplary in not violating the overnight curfew period. They rarely do that. And I've even heard that they will land at other airports in the area and ferry their people towards, in wherever they need to go, rather than landing at Westchester County between midnight and 6:30. So who's violating the overnight curfew? The companies that we see at the top of the list many months, many if not most months, are the fractional air charters, companies like NetJets and FlexJets, one of whom is applying for an expanded hangar for more planes. Also airlines, and they're, part of the issue is the overnight flights, but those are usually the result of delays, which, obviously they're scheduled rather tightly, but nonetheless, some delays are more understandable, right? But there's also flights that take off every morning during the overnight curfew period. Those are scheduled to take off during the overnight curfew period.
Commercial flights.
commercial flights. And the third, and frankly the overall largest category, are planes that are not based at Westchester County Airport. They're corporate and private jets that are known as transient jets, and they come and go and disregard the restraint on flying period.
Back to this gentleman's question, if you turn off the lights or don't have air traffic control, then they can't land and take off.
So the remark was, if we turn off if the county is able to turn off the lights and remove the air traffic control, does that solve the problem? Number one, turning off the lights will almost certainly, well, I shouldn't say almost, will certainly bring an action against the county with the FAA. And since the county doesn't have a grandfathering for those types of rules, it has no special permission, that would, in my view, certainly result in the county being forced to undo that immediately. Secondly, interesting note, overnight there are no people in the air traffic control tower. The air traffic control tower at the airport only actually governs a few miles around the airport. The rest of all the rest of the flight activity, including the takeoffs and landings overnight, are done by a regional air traffic control center. So I suppose it serves a role. That's why the FAA still staffs that tower during the busiest hours, but it's apparently not necessary for the safe operation of the airport.
Interesting. The last question. The last time I went through, I parked at the airport numerous times during the day, late evening, late afternoon, whatever, and quite often, perhaps depending on the day, I'd wind up on the upper deck because there was no parking available. So if that's been the case in the last couple of years, along comes Breeze, right? And now you got all these people who want to go to Vegas and all these other places. Are all these people going to have to park, off premises relative to, I remember they were still parking at Purchase College and whatnot. I don't know if that's still the case, but I know there's another down at the cellular area. Behind that, there's a parking spot as well. I don't think it's gigantic, but has anybody really thought about how much more space is going to be taken up, parking spaces, by Breeze's business?
Yeah, I mean,
You still have the limits of the 240 passengers per half hour, so you still have some limits on the capacity that can be going enplaning or deplaning at any given time. I want to just clarify for people too, the Purchase Park to Fly is not affiliated with the airport, and actually the airport has to take an official position that they're against any off-site parking. That's correct, right? That's their official position.
I haven't heard
so
them.
they don't have a
I
relationship
didn't know
that
if it
way.
still even existed.
No, I'm just trying to.
Thank you.
I just want to lay the facts out for people.
Thank you.
So the purchase operation is working again. Airline levels are still below where they were before the pandemic, and before the pandemic, the lot and the purchase and other means for getting to the airport and parking were working. It's been a long time we've been hearing, people say, well, the parking is limited. That may be true, but, things aren't worse now in terms of the available seats that, there are for passengers. One thing that the Airport Advisory Board has been talking about recently is making sure the county should have a system so that you can check the parking availability at the airport. So that you can make arrangements in advance to get a ride or share a ride, or have fewer cars that are making individual trips in and out of the airport, which of course has both environmental benefits, safety benefits in terms of traffic on our roads, et cetera. But there's no, on the face of it, there's no reason for the parking to not to be worse than it was before the pandemic.
Okay. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions? No? Okay. So again, We just want to thank everybody for coming and everybody who's going to watch later. And please, you can go onto the website for more information. And if you have any questions, you can respond to the email, which is airportmasterplan@ryebrook.org. And I think, is that
Yeah, and please, you get your friends, anyone going out to these county meetings are just so important.
Yeah.
There's going to be more in the future, but coming out early, showing that Rye Brook residents are very interested in the airport and the master plan supplement process is extremely important to know that we know that we care, and knowing that just mentioning that whatever your comments or concerns are goes a long way. If you see a sign up, make sure you sign up and put the address from Rye Brook and let them know that there's interest here in the community and protecting what's important to Rye Brook.
great, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank everybody for coming. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
guys.
Just one thing for though, kind of some of you guys came later. There's a couple sign out up sheets out front. So if you want to, and if you put your email down, we'll be able to keep you updated with any future developments on the Village Perspective.